Thank you. I started at the National Heritage Board for about 6 or 7 months ago to be part of this project, which was ongoing. I have my background in field archaeology, and I also served as a director for a foundation doing contract archaeology in Sweden. And that's one of the reasons I got involved in this, is sort of bringing in a bit of a sort of a reality check to part of the project. And it involves a lot of things, not just contract archaeology. It's a 5-year program, not a project, but a program, because it involves many different projects. It's financed by special funding from the government. It's supposed to be a comprehensive approach to preserving and sharing information that is produced in the heritage sector. And it's also aimed at creating effectiveness and value for quality for the development sector as well. That's why we got money from the government, not just to make us happy, but also to make developers happy. And the point is that it's going to be continuous delivery. It's not just one big major delivery at the end of 5 years, but we are trying to get things out underway. And we've had this going now for 2 years, and we're starting sort of coming into the actual production phase of it. So don't have to learn this by heart. It's sort of just to give you an overview of the complexity a bit of the program. It was ordered and supervised by the Director General, Lars Amreus, and the program itself is overseen by Tord Pøller, who is the leader, and we have a program board where I'm part of it. And it's officially sort of placed in the Department of Information and Communication at the National Heritage Board, but it involves people from all of the different departments, some of which are actively working in the program, and some of which are sort of parts of as reference people and experts in different segments that we are working with, because this is going to affect the entire National Heritage Board eventually. There are 3 sort of major segments of the program. It's the technical platform, which involves actually the entire IT platform of the National Heritage Board, which needed a bit of an update after a number of years now. But since so it involves more than that, but since that will be creating new e-services and use new platforms as well, it's a major part of what we're doing. There is some technical development for the applications and the e-services, and there is also sort of an operations part where I am which I am part of, that involves lots of things that sort of affect people, not just building stuff. And I'm going to go a bit more into that further on. There is also a sort of side project with the county administrative boards in Sweden to create better comprehensive rules and regulations. We do have national rules and regulations for the kind of decisions that they should be taking, but we've seen that can vary a bit in different regions. So they have a special project to look into that, and we are financing part of it. And they also have to update their own register for case information, and that register needs to be compatible and be able to speak machine to machine with our register. So we are collaborating with them in that area as well. So in order to sort of understand the problems that we have faced and the choices and decisions that we've made and the priorities that we're making, you have to understand a bit about the Swedish model of archaeological process. So we have Bob the builder, and he wants to build stuff. And he needs to get permission from the county administrative board, and they can set up conditions and say that we want to know what kind of sites are in these areas and what to do with them. And then the county administrative board orders the projects from the contract archaeologists. They set the terms and the conditions, and they approve the results. But the money flows from Bob to the contractors. He reimburses the costs. And when everything is done and approved, the documentation and the reports are supposed to go to the National Heritage Board for sort of national storage of everything, so you know where you can find it. And the artifacts, they go to the museums. So this is sort of like the special case in Sweden right now. And the National Heritage Board acts with oversights and regulations and creating the national registers for sites and monuments, things like that. So that's how it looks like in theory, at least. Well, mostly in practice too. So what are the problems? Well, you actually heard some of them from Agnieszka. I recognized a lot of it. We have site information that's been gathered over a long period of time with different aims and methods, definitely. I recognize some of the sort of descriptions that surveys have sometimes. And it's not really compatible always with modern use. You have something that is placed rather imprecisely on a map, and nowadays we need to know within a few meters where exactly this site is. And there is new types of informations as well. We have much more digital information. There is the long-term storage issue. People are using different kinds of software, and software goes out of date, as you know. Is comparability. Even if we use the same software, like Intrasys, different contractors build different databases, and they're not always easy to sort of combine and compare with each other. There is also ineffective information sharing, because we create digital information in one instance, and then we turn it into PDFs or paper or images, and then send it on, and then someone else is redigitalizing that, and then making that into paper, and someone else is redigitalizing that, and you lose information all along the way. And there is a big administrative backlog, especially for the archaeological site register, which is pretty much a year and a half behind right now, but we have a special project dealing with that as well, because the information coming in is too much for us to handle. And finally, there is a sort of a fragmentation problem. We have 21 county administrative boards. They have variations in standard, as I mentioned. Then each of these counties have several different organizations doing contract archaeology. Some contract archaeologists are, of course, active in many counties, but it's sometimes difficult to know who did what, where, and when. Another sort of special problem for Sweden is that we do have a lot of forest and a lot of economic activity in the forest that can threaten. They should not harm the sites that exist in the forest, but then you need to know where these sites are. The sort of black dots on the right-hand map are the archaeological sites that are registered. And, well, you know, it seems like, well, most of them are not in the forested area anyway, so that's not a big problem. But that's, of course, because these are the areas where we have done surveys. And the more surveys, the more sites, naturally. So this sort of so there is a lot of information lacking, and actually the forestry department are doing their own surveys, and we don't always get the information from them that they have about sites and things. So that's something that needs to be dealt with. This is kind of what it looks like now, in a way. We got an archaeological activity, and that creates a lot of information going in different directions. The county administrative board, they have the administrations and the decisions and the papers. There is the documentation and the regional data that usually stays with the contractors, because there is nowhere to store this digital information. The publications, reports and articles, they're sent to the Heritage Board. The artifacts go to the museums, and then there's the sites and monuments register. And it's not always, if you go to the sites and monument registers, you get some information, but it's difficult to find where everything else is kept, where are the finds, which museum did they end up in, and things like that. So that's what we want to move away from. In Sweden, contract archaeology really kicked off now in the past 15 years. We had a few contract archaeologists in the 90s, but in the past 15 years it's pretty much exploded. So we have a lot of different contract archaeology firms, small and big. What also happened in 2015 is that the National Heritage Board, which used to have a big archaeological unit, the biggest national, since this was a bit of a problem, since we were also doing the oversight, made a bit of a difficulty doing oversight on yourself, they were moved to the National History Museum in 2015. So they are now part of that. It makes it a bit more clear-cut. But this is also one of the issues that we have to deal with. So, and this is kind of like our vision. What we would like to see in the future is that all these different are just parts of a whole, and there is a flow of information in between them, and you can easily, going into one segment, you can easily find your way to information. You don't have to store everything at the same place, but you have to be able to find things more quickly. So, what are the aims have we sort of started to focus on within that to do? Well, first of all, we have to sort of redevelop and improve existing things that we have. We have a pretty large archaeological sites and monuments register. We actually have all of the sites, but it also includes sites that are not actually archaeological protected sites, sites that we call cultural remains, that should have sort of, you should be aware of them, but they're not necessarily protected. So it's sometimes difficult for people to understand, can I do something here or not? It's built on a bit of an old platform, which needs to be remodeled in total, and we need to have a better graphic user interface, so it's actually not just, we're talking here about data to knowledge, to actually understand what we're looking at, both for professionals and for the public. It needs to be easier to export and analyze data to make new information from it. And we're also trying to develop ways to actually, for archaeologists to register new information in the field. If they have a contract and they're doing things in the field, rather than filling out a form, sending it into the National Heritage Board, and it piles up, like I said, 18 months backlog, they can actually register directly into the system, and it won't become visible until it's approved by the county administrative boards, but this will at least be a lot more quicker, so we will have current information going into new projects. We also have, since a few years back, there is at the National Heritage Board register for PDFs of all the reports that are made on contract archaeology. However, the search function is not optional, and that is very difficult to actually find what you're looking for. So we need to have a new and improved platform with better search functions. There are some new developments, completely new ones, and one of those is a map service with the Archaeological service and excavations. What was done where and by who and when. And links to documentation, reports, artifact collections, case info, etc. This is what we're currently working most actively on right now, this spring. You'll see a few examples later on. And then there is also digital archaeological documentation register, sort of not just sort of where have we been, but also what did we find, what were the features, the constructions, where are the artifacts found, and things like that. So actually getting these digital projects into the National Heritage Board, that is a very big challenge that we're working, partly because we have old digital projects that we want to make available, but also to sort of create a new system in the future. If people are doing contract archaeology, what do they have to hand over? And do we need standards that they need to follow? Yes, we do. So there was actually last year there was a survey done since the contractors didn't have to hand over the digital projects, so we weren't sure if they kept them and how many there were. So there was a survey done last year with the contractor. The big sort of column here is actually what used to be the National Heritage Board's archaeological unit. So of course they have the most. And we actually have that because when they moved over, we kept that, so that we have. Then there are some museums that have a lot of digital projects. What was very positive is that almost everyone, or pretty much everyone, had saved everything they could save, but it was of course very sort of messy and kept somewhere on the server. But no one has thrown anything away. That's a good thing with archaeologists. We hate throwing things away. And you can see there's a lot of difference in how many digital projects there are, of course. But almost everyone, with a few exceptions, were very open, saying that yes, we will hand this over to you as long as it doesn't take that too much time for us to do so. But we will definitely hand it over. No one is proprietary about this. Yeah. So Marcus Smith, who some of you might know, yeah, this is his image. He's leading the project with collecting the old documents. So we have 4,000 old projects from the National Heritage Board, but we are also aiming to collect at least 50% of the projects from the other contractors, museums, companies. This will all be public domain, everything, the reports and everything. If there sort of the data is going to be as openly as possible, you have to reference everything that you find, and the reports and images are Creative Commons license. We are collaborating with the Archaeological Data Service here in England to sort of learn from each other, so we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. Both of us need to learn from each other. And we're creating sort of web map services for excavation areas. I'm just going to end up by showing you a few examples, but this is sort of work in progress, just to remember. These are sort of areas where there have been archaeological surveys and excavations that we have managed to collect so far from National Heritage Board and a few others. This will be available to sort of download and use in your own GIS. And in the future, we want to build map service. You can look at it immediately, but right now you need to download it into your own GIS platform to look at it. But we have a lot in there. And this is sort of images of what the graphic user interface may look like when it's done. You can go in and you can click on an area and click on different color shades, shows what different types of, this is not the periods, but rather the type of survey or excavation that's made, and get information, and you can download the geometries, the files into your own GIS platform and get more information. So this will cause some consequences, of course, what we're doing. There will be consequences for the National Heritage Boards. We are writing new rules and regulations, both internally and externally. There will be changing tasks. Some tasks within the National Heritage Board will disappear and new ones will appear, so we need to look into that. There will be new ways to do old tasks, like doing the oversight and surveys and things like that. You will have new ways of doing that. The county boards will also have new tasks, a new way of doing tasks, archaeologists as well, museums as well. So this affects people. When you're doing something new, it affects people, and that's something you mustn't forget and prepare for. So we have a communication plan. We are working internally. On the Intra website, we have a newsletter that comes out with some regularity now at least. And we also have open demos for employees that they can come and look at. Unfortunately, most of those are in Visby, so we have to do a bit more in Stockholm. We are selected in 2 different places. Externally, we have done national tours for companies and for government bodies, but now we're mostly moving over to more specialized meetings and workshops with representatives from forestry management, county admin boards, contract archaeology, museums, etc. The National Heritage Board has a blog, K-blog, and we now have a special menu for all the posts that we post. So for those of you who know Swedish, you can look at the blog posts, and those of you who don't know Swedish can use Google Translate and get everything wrong, probably. We also post some blog posts in other forums, and then in the future we will try to do some press releases when we actually have something to show. So this is the final slide. This is sort of like a vision of what we would like to see. Everything is sort of moving in a circle of life with information gathering, fieldwork, report processes, moving over into creating different kinds of data. Some data should go to the National Heritage Board. That's a red blob up there. Some things are going to the museums, purple blob, and then hopefully researchers will be using that information to create new information, and that will go back into the system and moving around and around forever. So that's what I had to tell you. Thank you.
Thank you.